Hi, Acadiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker here on a Tuesday afternoon. Hopefully, you're having a great day so far. A very, very hot one here in South Louisiana, and a little bit less rain than we've seen over the past several days. So, we do have some tropics to talk about. So, it's kind of nice that we don't have any other stuff that's really going on locally at this point in time when it comes to the big thunderstorms that we've seen. Unfortunately, with this 93L, as it moves off toward the west in the Gulf, still has a bit of a chance for some development. But at the very least, it looks like we could see a heavy rain event across much of South Louisiana and the northern Gulf Coast. And we've seen quite a bit of rain over the course of the year and really over the last several weeks here too. In fact, here in Lafayette, we're starting to approach 50 inches of rain for the year, which is about 15 inches above normal. So kind of nice to get a little bit of a break from some of that rain today. We do have partly cloudy skies and a temperature at 90 degrees, but it feels more like 99. That dew point at 74, and our humidity now running at about 60%. Winds are currently calm, and that pressure is running at, looks like at about, 3008 there. So, at this point, we're pretty calm across Acadiana this time around. Let's look real quick outside, show you what we've got going on. We do have a lot of sunshine and some very warm temperatures. In fact, that heat index today is probably going to get up to about 108, where we'll top out. And then as far as other areas, Opelousas, Alexandria, looking pretty good there off toward the north. Let's take a little tour. And we do have we've got a camera up here from Jacksonville, Florida. So this is a little bit closer to where the tropical system that we're looking at, this disturbance that's out there. And it's kind of on the coast right now, and therefore the reconnaissance aircraft was talking about the aircraft that was going to go out there. They went ahead and canceled that. Sorry, I'm trying to read one of the comments here and try to translate it here for it. But we're looking at a lot of wind there off the coast of Jacksonville and some cloudy skies. And we'll get to where that low pressure area is, at least at the last check. And as we look here, Orange Beach is looking pretty nice today. Dauphin Island, not too bad. Nice breeze there coming off the Gulf. And then as you move west toward Cocodrie, usually we see some thunderstorms off in the northwest there, out toward the east rather, but not today. And as far as Galveston, we're in pretty good shape there on this Tuesday afternoon. So we'll get into just our local boating here real quick. Not too bad across the Gulf waters, but things are going to be going downhill as low pressure starts to move off toward the west. And as I said, fortunately, the showers and thunderstorms are quite a bit less coverage out there than what we've seen over the past several days. Looks like we've got a little shower there near Jeanerette, Franklin, and over there south of Morgan City. A little shower there over northeastern Cameron Parish. Looks like the sea breeze is starting to kick in right about there in Cameron Parish. So most likely we'll see a few scattered showers starting to develop there over southwestern portions of Louisiana. Looking at the big satellite picture, of course, 93L is there off the Florida coast, right about in there, and it's going to be drifting off toward the west. We've also got a ridge of high pressure here, and we've got another ridge of high pressure that's out here in the Atlantic too, and another one that's over here. So basically what we're going to be looking at is more of a west to west-northwest track of this particular system here. So it's going to be hugging the coast. If it goes over land, obviously we're not going to have any development, but if it stays a little bit farther toward the south, we might have a better chance. But the National Hurricane Center is still going with a medium range chance, about 40% or so, that we will see some development. Now, the Euro model, this is the tropical formation forecast. So this is any tropical system that could form in the next several days. So it could be a tropical depression, it could be a tropical storm, it could be a hurricane. But minimum would be a tropical depression, obviously, and the Euro model now really putting those numbers up north of 80%, that there will be a tropical system, whether it's a depression or hurricane or a tropical storm in that area southeast of New Orleans or over the northern part of the Gulf Coast. Closer view of 93L as it moves on land. There's quite a bit of thunderstorm activity in the offshore waters. A little closer view with the visible satellite. You can see that rotation. And in fact, from where some of the forecasts, or rather some of the analysis are showing where that low pressure is. We'll look there. So the 7 o'clock this morning position was a little bit there near Cape Canaveral. But if you look at the satellite imagery there, you see a little bit more rotation between, let's say, Cape Canaveral and about Jacksonville. So perhaps it's a little bit farther toward the north, and it looks like it was making a bit more of a west-northwest or a northwest movement, but it's overland right now, and that's why the reconnaissance aircraft was canceled for today. They do have flights scheduled, though, for tomorrow, but it's going to be over the northeastern part of the Gulf. So again, that's where the position was of 93L as of early this morning, and that is the starting point based on all of our spaghetti tracks. And for the most part, the spaghetti models are pretty much in unison of a west or a west-northwesterly drift there along the northern Gulf Coast. And then as the ridge starts to break down north of that, you start to get a turn. So really for the first few days, everything's pretty uniform, but it looks like the models are having a little bit of a harder time when that ridge north of it would break down and allow it to turn northward. So you got some models that pull it inland there over Florida, some pull it over Mississippi, and then the other models that are a little bit farther to the west over Louisiana are basically thinking that that ridge is going to break down a little bit slower. But fortunately, the intensity models seem to be coming into agreement, and most are calling for a tropical depression. I think if I were here in South Louisiana, I would be preparing anywhere from a rain event to a low-end tropical storm. At least that's what I'm seeing right now. And there is going to be a flood potential across the area. This is actually the excessive rainfall outlook for Thursday, and that's kind of where the computer models are bringing this low pressure area here into Louisiana. I think I'm going to wait until tomorrow to show some of the models as the amounts of rainfall, because I really want that to be a little bit more accurate, because flooding is kind of top of mind with what happened in Texas, a week and a half ago, and up in New York today. And we've had flooding in many other areas across the country. So it is kind of top of mind. So I'm going to wait to kind of go through some of the rainfall amounts that we could see, just so that I know that I'm getting these right. Don't want to throw out any crazy numbers. I mean, we've already got enough crazy stuff that's going across social media. And one of those was the Icon model, by the way, a couple of days ago. And you're going to be surprised to see what the Icon model is doing today. And we'll get to those models in just a little bit. Part of the reason why many of us are kind of concerned about the possibility of tropical development are the water temperatures. They're sky high there across much of the northern Gulf. And that tropical cyclone heat potential, the loop current that's there over the southeastern Gulf, and those really high heat content values there off the coast of the Yucatan and south of Cuba and Jamaica. It's a little bit less as you get up toward the northern Gulf Coast, but the water temperatures are so warm. I do think that any tropical system that's trying to get going would probably at least have a decent chance. Now, the wind shear is something that inhibits the tropical development, but as you can see right now, most of our wind shear is out here over the western part of the Gulf, and we've got a lot less wind shear here where this tropical system is expected to develop. So it will have some pretty favorable conditions, at least for a couple of days, but as we go into Thursday, you can see that wind shear value kind of increases there along the northern Gulf Coast. Now, if this were something that were a little stronger already coming out of the Atlantic, it would probably be able to overcome some of this wind shear. But we're looking at a developing system, and because developing systems need some fairly calm conditions in the mid and upper levels, it's a little bit harder for some of these tropical systems to develop when you've got high wind shear. It kind of blows the tops off the thunderstorms that are on the outside of the core, and then if you get some really good wind shear, it can actually penetrate the core of that low pressure area, and sometimes you'll get a low at the surface that will be in one place, but then the mid and upper level parts of that spin will be offset by maybe 10 or 15 miles or so to any given direction. So you don't have a very vertically stacked type of system when you have a lot of wind shear out there. So it's a lot harder for developing systems to get going when there's high amounts of wind shear. But let's say this was a solid hurricane coming maybe through the Florida Straits or over Cuba and heading in this direction. That the wind shear values you're seeing there over the northern Gulf Coast, if this was already a hurricane, it probably would blast right through most of that and wouldn't have much of an effect. But anything developing really needs some decent conditions to get going. So let's get into the analysis here, and I am going to go over the models. I will let you know that the GFS model is still not predicting any solid tropical system. It's really still looking at more of a rain event. So we're looking there at the next 5 days. And I know there was a lot of new folks that came to Let's Talk Tropics yesterday, and usually I serve you up a 10-day model. But because we've got something that's a little bit closer, we're going to focus our attention a little bit in the shorter range here. But as we look at Thursday, you can see kind of a bit of a low pressure area, perhaps there over southern, south central, or southeastern Louisiana. But you do see quite a bit of rainfall in there. But at this point, the GFS doesn't seem to be producing a storm. Now, the Euro model has a bit of a low and it moves off toward the west. And again, it looks like most of the energy is going to be really hugging the coast. So if it stays over land, we're not going to have a lot of development. But again, just like the GFS, it is calling for more of a rain event. And depending on how quickly this moves, will depend on how much rain we get. And right now, it looks like it's going to be a kind of a slow mover. And if that happens, we could see quite a bit of rain. Canadian model, unfortunately, this is the 0Z model from earlier today. I was trying to work the 12Z, but it was running really slow. So I didn't have the complete model. I'll try to get the new version put up on Facebook a little bit later on this afternoon. But the model that ran this morning is still showing probably a tropical depression making its way westward just offshore of the northern Gulf Coast and then drifting westward toward Louisiana. And of course, if that happens, it's going to concentrate a lot of the moisture and the rainfall over southern and southeastern Louisiana, which is part of the reason why we're talking about the possibility of a flood threat. And then finally, the icon. And we're going to go back and I'm going to show you how much the icon has changed here over the last several days. But the icon still looks like it has a bit of a tropical depression kind of working its way off toward the west. And on Thursday, in fact, all those maps that I just showed you previously where the loop is stopped, they're all for Thursday of this week. So day after tomorrow. It is showing quite a bit of rain along the northern Gulf Coast and starting to encroach on Louisiana as well. At this point, it looks like the GFS and the Euro both are not calling for a storm, but the Canadian as well as the Icon model are both calling for a tropical depression. Real quick, I want to go into some of the high resolution models. We're just going to kind of slide this in here from Thursday. This is right now. But I'm going to kind of roll it back and forth here. And you can see that the NAM, which is more of a high resolution model, it is based off the GFS. But you see a little bit of a swirl there off the coast of New Orleans. So it might be suggesting a developing tropical depression, but maybe not quite making it all the way to a tropical depression. And real quick, I did want to show you the Icon model. So remember we talked about maybe a tropical storm or a tropical depression coming here over southeastern Louisiana. Down at the bottom here, there's where it says previous run. And I can click this button. So that's what the previous run looked like, which is pretty similar to what we have now. But as we go back several models, including yesterday, you can see yesterday the Icon was forecasting a full-blown hurricane, but in the successive models going forward now here, again, you can see that it's kind of backing off to more of a tropical depression or perhaps a tropical storm. There are some hurricane models that are coming out. The HWRF does have kind of a low pressure area. Oh, it looks like the new one's coming down here, but you can see the low kind of drifting inland over Florida. But this is a newer model, so it doesn't quite go as far off toward the west. But the last run was kind of showing more of a westward track, kind of like that, right along the northern Gulf Coast with some of our high resolution models. And we'll just kind of, for fun, we'll just kind of look at a few of these other ones here and see what we got. So we got a little bit of a low pressure there with one of our high res models, but it doesn't look like a solid low pressure area. But you can see there's a lot of rain, maybe a little low pressure, maybe a tropical depression on that frame there. But for the most part, it is calling for more of a heavy rain event. So again, I would prepare for anywhere between a heavy rain event as well as a tropical storm, probably a low end tropical storm. So if you do need to do your preparations over the next couple of days, just grab a few extra things. Make sure if you're in a flood prone area, maybe you might be able to grab some sandbags from the cities or the parishes. And I'm sure they're going to have some of that. Available to folks, and you'll have to check some of the local television or newspaper websites, most likely, to get some of the information on whether or not areas are going to be giving out sandbags. But you know the drill. Most of you who live here in South Louisiana, the more extreme side of this is, we see these kind of sloshy tropical depressions, or even just kind of a wave of low pressure moving off toward the west. And if they move really slow, you can get a real soaking rain. So flooding is going to be probably the biggest threat when it comes to that. And as I said, tomorrow I'm going to kind of focus more in on some of the rainfall amounts that are being forecast. I really want to kind of wait until tomorrow because that flooding thing is so top of mind on so many folks, and I really don't want to scare anybody. So let's real quick take a look at the rest of the tropics. And by the way, down there, when we're some of the comments there, I believe what they're asking there is what some of the Atlantic hurricane season is going to be like during the month of August. And it does look like things are going to start to turn on a little bit more. In fact, the GFS model goes all the way out to July 31st. So we are going to be starting to peak into August as early as tomorrow. But as far as portions of Florida, I do believe Florida is what you're looking at. Or the northern Gulf of Mexico there, we are going to be seeing more systems obviously coming in over the next several weeks. Caribbean satellite looks okay today. Everything's pretty calm, some fair weather clouds, bit of a tropical wave there kind of working its way through the southern Windward Islands, but really not producing a whole lot of rainfall. And then out in the tropical Atlantic, we do have a pretty good tropical wave right about there. It's got a pretty good flare up of thunderstorms, and there's another one that's kind of rolling off the African coast. Now, the initial one that's about halfway across the Atlantic is pretty far to the south, but we're going to watch that as it continues to drift off to the west. I can't say that any of the models are really picking up on anything out in the central part of the Atlantic, but I did look at some of the long-range models of the GFS and the Euro, and we are seeing some more robust waves coming off of the African coast and perhaps holding together a little bit better as they move across the Atlantic basin, which again is a normal thing that we would see during the second half of July. And really when we get into August, that's kind of when Cape Verde season starts to kick in and you get those robust tropical waves moving off to the west. And those are the ones that can become some pretty good hurricanes and cover some decent amounts of real estate there across the Atlantic and into the Caribbean. Meanwhile, the Saharan dust layer, it's still pretty thick out there, but this is another thing as we start to go into August. This starts to relax a little bit more, and it also helps to enhance the chances for development of tropical systems once we start to get into August and September, which is part of the reason why we see that ramp up so quickly there about halfway through August. I mean, July is usually a fairly quiet month. August, early in the month, we get a little bit of an uptick, but then we really skyrocket with the amount of activity. The peak of the season is generally around September the 10th. And then here along the northern Gulf coasts, we're still kind of under the gun, at least through halfway of October. But you might remember last year, our hurricane season continued well into November, so you can't let your guard down just yet. Remember, there are some things that you can go ahead and pick up right now. There's no panic buying happening right now, but at least for this particular event, if you want to grab some extra supplies just to kind of hunker down, especially if we end up with any flooded roadways or anything, or if there's any travel issues, But at this point, I'm not expecting any gusty winds, probably not too much in the way of power outages either. But this would be a good trial run to kind of look at your plan, make sure that you've got your insurance papers and all of your IDs, save those as digital. There's a number of things that you can do. And I would use this 93L if it comes in our direction as kind of a practice system. And hopefully, you'll have your plan in place when something bigger, which probably will happen sometime later in the hurricane season. Well, I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. Again, if you want those coordinates, they're right there on the left-hand side of your screen. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. Don't forget, you can hear me daily on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. My forecasts are there each weekday, all day. And of course, you can follow my social media pages both on Facebook and X. And thanks to everyone, especially the new subscribers, to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. So stick around on my social media pages. I'll have updates on computer models later this afternoon and again this evening. And we'll pick up where we left off early tomorrow morning on Acadiana Weather Today at 7 right here on YouTube. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you on Wednesday.